Welcome to the July 11th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. I'd like to call it to order, and would you all please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make a special announcement at this time and introduce to the Saline Area Schools community the one, the only, I can only build this up so much as you're walking to the podium, the one and only Jackie Martin. And Jackie is going to describe who she is and what she does, and many of us had a chance to meet you over the last week, and this is your chance to introduce yourself to the full, most 5/7 of the board.
Excellent. Thank you. My name is Jackie Martin. I'm pleased to serve the district as the new Executive Director of Communications and Community Relations. I'm returning to Saline as a third-generation alumni from the district, and I'm coming to this role after serving for the last 17 years as an extension educator with Michigan State University. But 15 of those 17 years were right here in Washtenaw County supporting the local 4-H program. In that capacity, I was a supervisor for 4-H staff in 6 counties, and then I also did statewide leadership, civic, and cultural engagement programming. I'm super excited to work with all of you and to learn all of the really great stories about Saline Area Schools and help to share them with the broader community. I'm really thankful for everyone that's already extended a very warm welcome, and I'm excited to get to know each of you a little bit better, so thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Apparently, we do have some skill testing questions.
Oh.
We do.
All right, 4-H, heart, health.
I just told her I hope I don't make her have to work
Heart,
too hard.
hands, and health.
Oh, we've got some 4-Hers out there who said, thank you
Oh,
very
yay.
much.
I'm so happy
Thank
to
you
hear
very
that.
much, Jackie.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure we'll be chatting again.
Thanks, Jackie.
So we're at the public comment section. A member of the public may address the board briefly for up to 3 minutes or request to be scheduled on the agenda of a future meeting. Please note that students will be given priority to speak on any topic. The first public participation section of the meeting will be limited to 1/2 hour, 30 minutes, normally, and limited to agenda items. A second public participation portion will be offered at the end of the agenda to allow for any other comment. Individuals addressing the board should take into consideration rules of common courtesy. The public participation portion of the meeting cannot be used to make personal attacks against a board member, district employee, or student. And I don't believe we have any student comments first, so we will start with Dennis Smallwood, and on deck will be Libby Williams. Now,
It'll be me keeping time tonight.
Brad has volunteered to keep time in absence of our secretary, Jenny Miller, and he knows how the cards work. Is it 30 seconds, Brad?
Yep, so I'll give you 30 yellow, red is 3 minutes.
And if you press the green button, we'll all be able to hear you.
Okay. Members of the board, those who are present, as they said, my name is Dennis Smallwood, and the first issue on the form was my affiliation, and I found that interesting because it's going to deal with what I'm talking about tonight. All of us have many affiliations. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, and I'm here tonight quite simply because my daughter asked me to be here. I have 6 children. They were born in the span of 7.5 years. I'm very familiar with talking to principals and teachers of all kinds. Not because my children were bad necessarily, but because I believed in their rights and what was happening to them. So I do have some experience in talking with them. What I want to talk about tonight, though, is a very general and broad category of bullying in schools in particular, not only between students and faculty, wherever it should occur. Bullying is not by any means a new topic or a new subject, not even new in schools. And it comes in many different forms. But it always boils down to 2 points that I want to talk about. The first is prejudice, of course. Prejudice coming from lack of diversity, from an inability or unwillingness to discuss ideas openly, not only with your children, but with other adults as well. I think that's a very important issue, and I wanted to get that out first. Bullying in and of itself isn't an issue unless we let it become an issue in many different ways. It comes from, as I said, being excluded or being hidden and not being given the opportunity to see the world around you, even at an elementary school level, any level, given the opportunity to see what's around you and to act accordingly and to get that experience to know how to act accordingly. Very important topics for me, even today as I'm growing older. Also simply solutions, if you want to call them solutions. I prefer to call them approaches to the issues of bullying and prejudice. The first one is always critical thinking. And critical thinking is very important to teach, again, all ages, all levels. Children 5, 6, 7 years old can be taught how to see an issue or a problem and how to look at it in a way that's not threatening, non-violent, and non-intimidating. And I think that's a primary focus, any age, any level. And diversity is so very key to that. If you have only one subject in front of you, you don't know how to deal with others as they come along. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smallwood. Parent Libby Williams, and on deck is Lisa Slauson.
That was my dad.
Was it?
Yes. And you might see why he's constantly talking to principals when I start talking, so I... Good afternoon, members of the board. It's ironic that today's agenda is about bullying, ironic and duplicitous. The majority of you ran on a platform of progression and inclusion, but your actions have revealed different values. Instead of working to protect people targeted by bullying, you have chosen on multiple times to side with the ones perpetuating the cycle of abuse. Even worse, you have willfully ignored authority figures within the administration that are guilty of this behavior. When adults engage in bullying, it sends an unmistakably clear message to the student population at large that bullying will be overlooked, provided it is against certain types of people. People some administrators do not like and are actively working to drive out of our school system. Saline school systems made headlines with the Snapchat incident poorly defending our school's black students. Now it is poorly defending its transgender and gay students and officials. It seems the only thing this administration has learned from previous public scandals is to suppress any report of bullying or staff harassment to the point of persecuting its victims. This must not stand. It is meaningless to discuss any anti-bullying policy when administration officials are actively targeting people they should be defending. The problem starts at the top, where the culture of tolerating this toxic behavior originates. These individuals must be removed before they bring further material harm to the school district. The community needs progressive, empathetic leadership now more than ever. We thought that is what we fought so hard for in the last election. It has become disappointingly clear in these past few months that's not what we got. A great majority of us have been trying to protect our community and children from bigots, bullies, racists, and misogynists. And instead, we may have opened the door and voted it in. This board needs to decide who it works for: themselves, the superintendent, the religious right, or the community that voted them in and trusted them to move education forward in Saline. Where do you stand? I stand against all forms of bullying. I denounce Facebook hate pages that torment and spread lies of the LGBTQ people and their allies. I stand with the LGBTQI community. I stand with Trustee Estep. I stand with Saline. Thank you.
Lisa Slauson.
First of all, 1981 grand champion in clothing for a jumpsuit that I made, and it was awesome. It also won a champion at the Indiana State Fair. Okay, so first of all, thank you for letting me be here. Secondly, let's talk about this bullying report that you guys declined to share with us. That's your decision, that's fine. But any bullying, any verified bullying report is too many. Imagine if this was your child, and here's the school board talking about them as a number. It's too many. I know that that number is probably at least 5 times, 6 times that. The reason I know is because my child never reported, because that child was scared, not only of the bullies, but of the school district. And I was on the board. That's really, really chilling, that fact is. Also, let's talk about the board governance model. The board governance model says that it's not the Carver model anymore, which is what, when I was on the board, we dispensed with. The Carver model, or the board governor's model, says that you work for us. You work for the taxpayers. You don't work for Steve. You don't work for the district. You work for us. And by extension, because you hired Steve, Steve works for us, the taxpayers. So we need you to stand up against hatred in this school district. Discrimination, hate speech, we need you to stand up. You've done it before. Steve was sitting at this table. A number of you were sitting at this table. I am Jazz, George, the racist Snapchat. You stood up. There were 3 other board presidents before this board president that stood up. You stood up, and you said in a very moving statement by Superintendent Graydon that we are not a racist, bigoted, homophobic, transphobic community. We do not stand for that. And I'm not asking you to do anything that is out of the purview of what you can do. You're not politicians, but at the same time, you're public officials we have entrusted the trustee role. We give you our money. We expect you to do what's right all day, every day. Stand up to hate. There is a Facebook page that is, it is just awful. And they have went after people who raise money for elections. They've went after people who are on your DEI committee. They've went after people your DEI director. They went after Trustee Eastep. And you don't say anything. Say something, because I used to be on this board and I used to sit right there and there and there. I'm tired. I can't do this forever. I need you to stand up and do what we elected you to do. Or else we have to talk about the issue of recall. That's what we have to do. If you don't do what the taxpayers want, which was make this a nice, pleasant community where my property values go up, we're going to have to talk about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a quick response to public comment from June 13th, 2023. I want to thank Jonathan Spencer for his comments on the Science Olympiad, and to Catherine Kelly for her comments on STEM and the upcoming bond construction. I also want to thank whoever was responsible for the Masquerade book that we received. I know how much effort goes into producing those things, and I was very impressed with the collection of writing and art that was showcased. So thank you to everybody who contributed to its production. And finally, I want to just thank the dozen or so members, dozen plus, who spoke primarily about Policy 2240. We really did appreciate your insights and contributions to a very difficult discussion that we've been having. So, revisions to the agenda. Items can be added or deleted from the meeting agenda, or the order can be changed at the request of an individual board member or the superintendent. The agendas must be approved before proceeding further. I will recommend, what's the word I'm looking for? I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
So moved. Stebbin.
Kirby, second.
Okay. No discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we have an agenda. I'd like to entertain a recommended motion to name the following banks or depositories for the various funds of the Saline area schools in fiscal year 2023-2024. Bank of Ann Arbor, Michigan Liquid Asset Fund, and the Old National Bank.
Motion, Gerby.
Gerby. Second. Tim Austin, second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
And that would be, sorry, I don't want to lose track, 5-0. I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize Stephen Lotch, superintendent, as the primary signer on all checks written by the district, with Miranda Owsley, assistant superintendent of finance, as alternate on all accounts listed. And I'm going to list the accounts. The Bank of Ann Arbor, 2021 bond checking account, 2023 bond checking account, the Michigan Liquid Asset Fund, 2021 bond investment account, 2023 bond investment account, the Old National Bank, General Fund payroll, community education, recreation, cares, food service, student activity, comma, the Edge, Flex Benefits, Maestro, 2016 BNS Debt Service, 2018 B&S 2 Debt Service, 2021 BNS3 debt service, 2018 refunding debt service, 2023 BNS1 debt service, the Sinking Fund, the Paul Handy Scholarship Fund, Tim Corrali Memorial Fund, the Horticulture Award, Jeremy Tarlea Scholarship Fund, the Randy Hoffman Fund, Rachel Townsend Fund, Dora May Meyer Memorial Scholarship, and the Catherine Steiner Burr Scholarship.
So moved, Stebbin.
Jay, thank you.
Support, Eastep.
Thank you very much. Without discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Away we go. I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize Stephen Lodge and Superintendent and Miranda Owsley, Assistant Superintendent of Finance, as signatories on transfers of investment monies.
Motion, Gerby.
Support, Stebbin.
Thank you. I don't see her here tonight. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And pass. I'd like to entertain a motion to participate in the State of Michigan Loan Revolving Fund as submitted by Assistant Superintendent Miranda Owsley.
So moved.
Is that Tim? Was that Tim? Yeah, thank you. And Brad Gerby. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Passes. I'd entertain a motion to appoint the Thrun Law Firm, PC of Lansing, Michigan, and Collins and Blaha, PC, as legal counsel for the school district for the 2023-2024 school year. In addition, the district is authorized to utilize other law firms depending on areas of expertise.
So moved, Stebbin.
Thank you.
Second, Gerby.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I would like to make, well, maybe after discussion, a motion to add after school district or board, because that's what the actual policy says.
Could you direct me to which policy that is that you're referring to?
Absolutely. It is, actually, it's a bylaw.
Oh.
0172, and I can read that for you.
Sure.
Legal counsel. The Board of Education may employ an attorney to represent the school district or board in actions brought for or against the district or to render other legal services for the welfare in the school district.
So you would like to include the word "or board" after the word "district"? Is that correct?
To be consistent and
I'm-
clear.
To amend it
That's,
that way?
yeah.
One could argue that the school district includes the board, but since the language is out there, your point is well made. I'm happy to make that amendment now.
I'd like to have
But-
time to read the policy.
Yeah,
Yeah, because, and I can just explain myself, definitely assume it says what Susan said it did. But it said authorized to utilize, I just wonder if this gets into, who's contacting them and the procedures around that. I would just like to read the bylaw first before.
And I guess I would say, if you don't mind me jumping in too,
Yeah, yeah.
about the idea of just may employ also does not imply that we do, right? So for me here, we are appointing these as legal counsel for our district, but the board can then employ an attorney to represent the school district in addition? Is that what that's how I'm interpreting that? Do you have any thoughts on this, Steve? Or?
What trustee Stebbs is reading suggests that it could be either me representing the district or you that contact council. And that's what that's suggesting.
So I guess from a
That's the best
budget,
course of action.
from a budget standpoint, I think, and maybe Miranda would have to clarify this for us, but I think all of the legal fees are underneath the Board of Education. They're not.
That's correct.
No, it doesn't. There's a line under supervision. I looked it up today. I can, so I think it was 13,000 maybe under supervision and then 80 plus under the board, which I was hoping for clarity on that as
Yeah.
well.
So you're saying the supervision, the 13,000 for supervision was from the board,
No, but that,
and the 80,000 was the administration that?
so
they
the
used?
supervision line, I don't know if that's the superintendent specifically, but under the board budget was more to legal when I looked at the amended budget, from earlier, well, the approved budget from earlier, there, whenever I did find search, it was two different lines.
Okay, I'll look that up too.
And I was
Thanks.
curious
Yeah.
about, that, and, yeah.
My recollection is what Tim's recollection is, that typically, and it might be stated differently in the document that you were looking at, historically, we have carried the legal fees under the Board of Education line item. But Miranda's not here, so I can't.
There was a comment earlier about needing to read the policy. Actually, trustee Eastep's brief reading was the entire policy. And I'm happy to, it's, so 0172, legal counsel, the Board of Education may employ an attorney to represent the school district or board in actions brought for or against the district and to render other legal services for the welfare of the school district. That's it. So adding or board, I don't think changes the deep nature of the motion. Do you?
No, I don't, because it already. Board policy 131.1 then would create some amount, in my opinion, of like, which one are we following then? Because in 131.1, I'm fairly certain it talks about that legal can be brought forth by the superintendent and or the chair of the committee.
That's actually a board operating procedure. It is not in the actual policy. And
Okay.
that's specifically for
You're
board.
right.
That is specifically for the policy committee. And if somebody brings a proposed revision of a policy, they're able to do that. That's the only, I think, out of any of our, well, it's not in our policies or bylaws, but I don't think there's any, I mean, we could appoint people to, the superintendent, and, because I'm curious who is contacting legal and what we're using the funds for and how much we're paying per, phone call, text, all of that. We could name, like we do with the checks and stuff, and then name the board president or whatever that would look like. Especially if it's under our budget, I would think there would be some sort of working together on that if that occurs.
It sounds like Dr. Lotch is able to address all or some of what you just raised. Susan?
And I can say that there's really 3 buckets where we generally contact our attorneys for. Actually 4. I'll start with human resources related things. If Kurt is trying to work on legal ramifications and bargaining and various things like this, we are often using attorneys. In addition, discipline, when we're going through things like potential expulsion hearings and so forth, we're definitely using legal fees for that legal, whether it's Collins and Blaha or Troon. And then a fair amount with special education. Special education, we need to contact attorneys about a lot of legal procedures. But then a more recent expense is truly that I'm being directed a fair amount from the board to check things out regarding policy and things that are coming directly from you all directing me to contact attorneys to find out various things related to policy. So really, I would say those are the 4 main areas that we have expenses. And we can go ahead and showcase what we're paying for legal fees. And if you want a little more detail on who's sort of ordering it up, I can provide that too. Yeah. Yep, and we can continue to.
Yeah, I think that, and to my
Showcase
recollection in
that.
finance, that's something that's been reviewed in the past, so, yeah.
Correct. And I think I'd be open to us having that discussion and that revision occur in the finance committee and have us like take that and own it, if you will. But I mean, if you're asking me to like amend the motion right now, I would request that we table that and at least have a discussion or allow us to have the proper time
to go about that discussion.
May I just clarify, Steve, is this something that's time sensitive, or is it something that can wait till the next one?
I didn't bring up the motion as being time.
But if we don't
Okay.
pass it tonight.
No, I'm just clarifying, like, is it something that needs to happen tonight, or can it happen at the next meeting, or?
In my opinion, yeah, it doesn't need to happen at all. So you decide if you, I
Okay.
feel like it's time sensitive to add that.
Because some things like budget stuff, we have to do it on, yeah.
That's for you all to decide.
So you are still empowered, like if we had a legal issue in the next, month, you would still be empowered by us not passing this to still contact our existing Thrun and Collins and Blaha representatives. We don't have to annually approve this.
I
do
mean,
we?
no, we do. However, I would say that if you want to table this and wait for the appointing, you could do that. I mean, at some point, we do need to recognize that we're going to state that we need, at this point, these two legally representing us, and we want the board and the public to know that those are our two representatives. But they continue on unless,
Okay, so
Same
you don't
here.
have to we wouldn't have to have a special meeting for you to be able to ask for legal services starting tomorrow or starting 2 weeks from now, that kind of thing.
personally, I'd prefer you to appoint it tonight with the current language and then revisit to change it some other way if you feel like you want to add in or board later.
I just don't want to leave us legally.
I'd have to go check to see if we legally need to approve it at this meeting tonight.
I don't want to
I
leave
don't-
you without legal recourse if
I
you
don't-
need it.
I don't know the answer.
I know.
It says, in addition, the district is authorized to utilize other law firms pending areas of expertise, so I don't think that doesn't, unless it's involving board, I think that goes to Steve, right?
So I guess my thing, in my years, if there was something that we questioned, we approached the superintendent about contacting an attorney. I don't know, maybe Susan, you've had a different experience, but I've never had an experience where that didn't happen.
I have that experience that it doesn't happen all the time, so.
So,
I get,
go ahead.
oh, I guess I don't have a major concern. I mean, the policy is super, super short. What Susan read is what it says. So I don't think I have a major issue. I think what I would just ask is consideration if something is observed in advance of the meeting, just give us some time to process it and ask, because I would have asked Steve ahead of the meeting if this is something that would have been required to be passed tonight or if we needed time. I also would love the policy committee to kind of look at this policy because it's pretty short and isn't super comprehensive, but I don't have a huge issue adding that, but I would ask for
don't either. I just don't
consideration
want to get
next
into a
time.
situation where
Yeah,
any 7 of us can just contact an attorney,
correct.
because I don't think that's ready. We don't want that.
And I don't want that either. And we talk about being, we have a financial responsibility to our taxpayers to be responsible with things such as our legal services and the fees and the amount of things that we do. So I would have some concern on that front to make sure that we had some kind of procedure, some kind of means for how do we get those things approved. I would want that as myself as a trustee.
Yeah, so I would say, well, I mean, this is just law. When it says the board, so no one board member that sits up here has the authority to do anything unless it is the board decision. So when it says board, I don't see that as all 7 board members can, go and do this. A board decision is at the board table, closed session, special meeting. That needs to happen, right, previous to that. So it's not like one individual or a couple, right? I think that needs to be transparent to our taxpayers especially. So whenever I see board, I don't think that, I mean, legally and through policy and bylaws, one member doesn't have the power of the full board. I think that's pretty clear.
Okay, well, when we say we want to reference individual people on the board that could, then that is stating that we don't want any 1-7 to do it. if you're gonna say the president can do it, but I can't, well, that means I'm not gonna be able to call the board. I don't wanna call an attorney myself, but, unless it was a group thing, but when we're setting, you're acting like my question is off base. Well, no, if we're gonna sit there and say, we're gonna elect maybe the vice president and the president to be able to call the attorney, then that means the other four can't.
I'll respond to the way it has typically worked is I contact the attorney on behalf of the board, and you were alluding, Trustee Sip, that there are times where I will not contact attorneys when you've said it. I'm not aware of that situation. I've tried to respond to when board members are asking questions about policy and it's agreed that they want a legal opinion, that I am contacting attorneys to determine what that opinion is. And I'm not aware of times where I've either refused to do that or won't do that. Because in the past, typically it's been the response comes from me after discussing with the attorney. There have been times where I've had calls with the attorney and a board member, most recently Trustee Miller on a call related to controversial issues policy. But I cannot recall a time where I have either refused to contact an attorney on behalf of the board or won't do that.
Well, I guess then in full disclosure, I will jump in and say that I have. And I referenced 131.1, okay, from a financial chair standpoint. 131.1, number 4 says the policy committee chair and or the superintendent may seek legal review if necessary. So if we're going to have language that runs counter to each other, I mean, I guess if I want to make sure I'm interpreting actually first something you said a moment ago, Trustee Estep. So you said the board constitutes all of us. So you're saying if we change the language tonight to say, or the board, then a majority of us would have to be in agreement that we need to pursue legal review.
That's how I would interpret it. The board as a whole, we are a body.
I can live with that, actually, if at
But
least
Susan,
4
is
of
that
us
what you
have to.
meant?
Yeah, I wasn't saying, so an individual board member going and contacting legal, that's what I thought you all were kind of seeing it as. Like, I'm not even talking to the superintendent or the board president. I thought you all were saying that this says that one individual or each 7 of us can just up and contact them. That wasn't, I'm still talking. That wasn't what I was saying. Committee-wise, this is a committee procedure that was come up with. This isn't the only thing. I mean, the committee asked questions, and the chair gathered that, and they took that back. It sounds like, I will say about the controversial issues policy, I've been asking for years for Thrun's opinion about whether it is a legal policy, something that we are legally required to have. That was since early 2021, and that never came back, and we never visited that policy until this year, specifically from getting that physical legal opinion, and that was even difficult to receive. So yeah, this is again simply through a committee perspective that isn't followed along with everything else. So yeah, I mean, if one board member goes and asks Steve, let's get an opinion on this, I think there needs to be further discussion, and that probably involves the board president and communication to the full board and possibly making that decision here at the table. I mean, that can.
Okay.
I think I've
Thank
got a
you
way
for that.
forward. So thank you for that clarification, unless you've got something urgent to add.
I had a suggested way forward too, so why don't, you want to go first?
In my position as chair, yeah. So it sounds like we still have a motion on the table, and that is to approve the original language. Is that correct? You're not withdrawing it?
So I was actually going to revise it.
Okay, well, what I was going to suggest is that we put that to a vote right now, since it's already up there, and then I would entertain a motion to revisit this language, as well as policy 0172 in both finance and the policy committee meetings. Does that make sense? So that we come back and maybe this will show up again with those 2 words added, just to be,
You mentioned did you mention finance?
yes,
Yeah, I know,
because it had come up.
yeah, and I communicated with Brad about, some boards have provided like legal reports, where those things are broken down as far as where our, what's being spent in
Right.
different areas, what Steve had talked about.
And I would agree that's a reasonable thing, and I think the finance committee would entertain that.
But since we still have this motion on the floor, and I'm handing it now over to Vice President Steven to tell me what she'd like to do with this motion at this point.
I'm fine. We can leave it. I have a suggestion, but if we come back to it, I'd like to take the advice that we move forward. So I'll stand by my recommended motion as written.
All right, if there's no further discussion, we will get back to this, I'm sure. Let's put this to a quick vote now, or a slow vote, pardon? Unless you have more discussion.
Are we voting on it as is, or?
As is. And then, as I said earlier, I'm going to make a motion to revisit the language within the month at 2 different committees. But we haven't quite drafted that language yet. So let's just put this to a vote at this point, the motion that's on the table right now, to appoint those 2 particular firms as legal counsel for the school district for next year, and the other part. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm hearing 4 opposed.
Aye.
All right, I hear 4-1. Thank you. So we have this motion now. I'd like to entertain a motion to revisit policy 0172 in both the policy committee and finance committee at the earliest possible. I've got to do this soon, I guess, but I don't want to rush them because they both have heavy agendas, I'm sure. But let's just say there's a motion to revisit policy 0172 in both policy and finance committee in the near future. At this point, nobody has made that motion.
I'll make it. Kirby.
I can support.
All right. Guess we come back to discussing it again. Since you had raised this originally, Trustee Eastep, are you okay then? So the idea then is that both policy and finance would have a discussion of this and and make a recommendation as to whether to modify this language, and then we can cycle back and pop it back on the board agenda next time. That's the way I interpret this motion at this point. Is there any other discussion?
So you're not simply referring, you're just making a motion and we're voting on referring it to those committees?
Correct. That was a good facial. Yeah. It's almost a vote right there. All right, well then, all in favor of that motion made by Brad Gerby and Jennifer Stebbin, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Guess we have a quick item for the next agenda on those 2 committees. I'd like to entertain and thank you very much, Susan Eastep, for bringing that up. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the recommendations from A.R. Brower to accept the bid proposal from Wolverine Steel. Oh, did I really? Which did I miss?
Missed F.
I do not have, I guess I'm,
The drafting desktop here. It's this one.
no, it's in a different place in mine, so I'll have to, give me a moment to read tonight's. No, I printed it up a few days ago, so obviously there've been some changes, so here we go. Yep. No, I got that. All right, thank you. So this is, I'd entertain a motion to approve the proposal to purchase 32 computer-aided drafting desktops through Inacomp TSG in the amount of $84,480 as submitted by Jay Grossman, Director of Technology. These purchases will be funded from bond funds and will be for use in the computer-aided drafting and design courses.
So move, Stebbin.
Thank you.
Support, Eastep.
Super. If there's any discussion, I know our friend is back there, if we have any questions. I actually, once again, I called up the company to find out the correct pronunciation of Inacomp. So,
Do
Yes,
have
sir.
one question. This is being used with bond money, and is these drafting tables going into like the consortium? So these will be used by the consortium then? in the high school, the drafting tables?
Yes, to clarify, they're desktop computers.
Desktops will be?
Computers.
Yeah, computers, okay.
But yes, they'll be used by
Sorry,
the
I'm
students in
back
the consortium.
1990, still drawing on
And,
paper.
yes, the students that participate in the consortium and as well as Saline students.
Okay, just a quick overview of that, because I know like with our director, part of that funding is done by other schools. So how, does the other schools fund some of this too then, or how does that work?
They don't necessarily fund computers and say, because those are also being used with, other classes too often, but the actual equipment, like if we're doing a CNC machine or drill presses and things like that, or welding materials, then when we're purchasing big items like that, the consortium does have percentages that each district pays. But computers, when they're used for other classes and for primarily Saline area school students, that's not something where you divide up all the costs like that. But
Okay.
a lot of the big ticket items, yes.
Yeah, I was just
are
wondering
divided
how
up
that
by the
funding
different
worked with all
consortium
the other
districts. Yeah.
consortium classes. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with this proposal. I'm just thinking, okay, if we're bond funds, I don't want to be going out and buying stuff that other schools should be kicking in on. But if
Yeah,
that's
and
not computers-
something like I said, a CMC machine, funds would be raised differently to be distributed amongst all the districts for, big item like that.
I wonder if someday we need a breakdown of the consortium and just which resources each school and each district, I should say, brings to the table for our
Yeah,
students. So-
I can have our new director do, yeah.
Can we send
No,
that to
our new
finance?
director has to be-
It's good timing.
We can do that too.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
Send it to finance.
So hearing no more discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Said, okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Grossman, I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Now we're talking about Wolverine Steel, correct?
Yep.
A motion to approve the recommendation from A.R. Brower to accept the bid proposal from Wolverine Steel Erectors Incorporated to install a 16,000 square foot pre-engineered insulated building in the amount of $671,002 as submitted by Rex Clary, Executive Director of Operations, and Mr. Clary is here. First, the motion.
Motion, Gerby.
Thank you.
Second.
Tim, thank you. I must say, I enjoyed reading those blueprints, or they weren't exactly blueprints, the schematic drawings, the conceptual diagrams. Those were great.
Yes, it's exciting. It's exciting phase in the process of design, and to see that on paper, to see the renderings. Really looking forward to getting the shovels in the ground and get going.
Are there any other comments to make or questions? So, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Looks like we have a building.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the awarded Round 3 CARES funding in the amount of $97,585 as submitted by Brian Puffer, Director of Community Education.
So move, Stebbin.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Was that Tim? Thank you. You sound a lot like Brad when you're over there. Okay. Is there anything you can add to this? I enjoyed reading the proposals.
Sure, I'll just give you I'll give you a quick overview. This is round 3. So the CARES board met on Monday, June 26th and voted on the 11 grants that were submitted for round 3 of CARES. As you can see, 9 out of the 11 grants were fully funded for a grand total of $97,585. This year, we were able to award out 24 grants totaling $173,711.40 for the 22-23 school year. This is the most grants we've awarded since COVID, obviously, so we're happy to do that. And we're excited to award out more starting next school year as well. And I'd also like to thank our CARES Advisory Board for doing an outstanding job this year in reviewing all of our grants. And that would be Rob Shingle, Amy McGovern, Chris Michalak, Barry Livesey, and Jim Heft.
Of those 24 proposals granted, how many were not funded?
We have 24 were funded. There was, I have to go back and look at it. I would say there was probably 7 or 8 that were not funded.
Okay.
Yep.
Sure we'll see those again.
Yeah, and they do apply. Typically, when they don't get funded, they're asked to reapply and given the reason why they didn't fund. It depends on what round they do it to and who they're up against.
Okay, Treasurer Gerby has a quick question.
Yeah.
I wonder about the lifetime of this CARES millage. Like, this is round 3. How many rounds do we anticipate there will be?
There's 3 every school year, every fiscal year.
Okay.
Yep, every fiscal year. Typically, we have about $82,000 a school year to award out, but we've had a fund balance because we didn't spend some during COVID. Yep.
Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Sounds like we've got some money being spent. Thank you very
Thanks.
much. We have 2 scheduled reports, both from Superintendent Lutch, one the enrollment update, and we'll get to the next one when we get to it. Don't want to give too much of a preview.
Okay, thank you very much. Ben Goodman and myself are going to tag team this because we're going to go back and forth between some slides and the internet, some web pages associated with MI school data so that we can really look at how we estimate enrollment. And I will say this is a process that is complex and it's based on so many different variables, some of which we know and some of which we do not. But we're going to walk through how I have looked at estimating enrollment for the next school year based on the previous 4 years, even as back as far as the previous 8 years. Okay, let's see. Okay. All right, somewhat difficult to read, but this chart is one that Miranda has been keeping track of for quite some time now, and it's showing more or less straight line move up and also any gains we've had and losses in the various grade levels. This dates back to 2016-17, where we were at a high of 5150 students, and now this past school year, 4740. So there's certainly been this decline of around 400 students that's taken place over this time period. And then that blue section rolling forward over the next 3 school years is looking at if that trend continues, we could have further losses in each of the following school years, or each of the next 3 school years. And we're going to look at factors that may suggest that some of those things could happen. There's some other factors that suggest they won't. In addition, one of the things that I'm going to be working with Jackie specifically on is what is our master plan to really market the school district and surrounding Saline community to make sure that we are seen as that destination district that we have for many years, and to showcase what we have to offer as people are moving into the state. I think one of the things we're good at is marketing the district in terms of the great things that are going on with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so forth. But often that's hitting our own internal customers. So the question is how do we reach a bigger footprint of, when Toyota's bringing 200 new jobs in, how are we reaching out to make sure that people know that, hey, Saline is a destination district and we have a lot to offer families and students. So we're going to take a look at this 7-year count. One thing to note that is important is for the 2 COVID years, we certainly lost more students. At the end of 2020-21, we were down 178 students, a little over 100 at the end of the 21-22 school year. This last school year, that loss had dropped to close the gap of only losing 41 students. So obviously what we're trying to do is stabilize enrollment so that we can determine how we continue to staff and provide the wonderful services that we need to do for our students. However, we do know that students are associated with dollars. That's how we're primarily funded. So we watch enrollment closely to determine, well, if we do need to make cuts and reductions, how do we keep those cuts and reductions away from the students? So that's our philosophy moving forward. Okay, so this is a chart that shows student count across the entire state of Michigan. So if you look back to 2010 and 11, there were a little over 1.6 million students, and now, a little over 10 years later, there are 1.437 million students. And so, you know, that drop is challenging because it certainly does suggest that there are, well, it's not suggesting, it is stating that there are less kids in the pool of the number that are enrolled in public schools. And then the question is, well, is that because we have a lot less students, or are they taking other options besides public schools? And we're going to take a look at some of that tonight. This next slide is MI school data. And by the way, this is public information. So if anybody does want to go look at this, you go to the MI school data website and you can plug in any district in the state. You can compare it to different districts. You can run a trend count and so forth. So what this one primarily is showing is that Saline is represented in the orange line. And that's the number of kids that we are bringing in from other districts primarily. So that's mainly our school of choice or non-resident students. And when I say non-resident students, if you know, an employee is bringing a student here, even if they're not in the county, they'd be able to do that. Non-resident, that's what the orange graph represents. Blue is other kids going to other programs via school of choice. So we still and always have lost some students to other districts for a variety of reasons. So this is primarily the school of choice chart. Now this one is our overall trend pattern, which is including a lot of things. This is kids that are going to private schools, kids that are homeschooled, kids that are enrolled in online virtual programs, and kids in school of choice. And you can see that this is trending, that there are more kids overall, at least in 2021-22, that are going to other options versus the orange line, which is Saline, that are coming to us. However, there's one caveat here. Notice how this data only goes through 21-22. I am pretty certain that when we see the 22-23 data, that closes to be about even, because we got a lot of students back between the 21-22 school year and 22-23. So my hypothesis is that we will see those bars being just about even when we get to 22-23. Regardless, the pattern is that we have had over the last 7 and 8 years over 300 kids, up to as many as 550, that are going elsewhere. And that pattern has existed for some time. And so the question is, where are they going? And what are we able to do to make sure that we're providing the best option for the vast majority of our students? I will say this, that public schools in general are not going to be able to meet the needs of every student. If, for example, a parent says that I really want my child to be homeschooled because I feel like that would be better for them, okay, then that's going to be an environment that we would not be able to help support. Same thing if a parent says that I would like my child to have a Catholic religious education, that's not something the school district can support. If a parent says my child learns better being in a full virtual program, our school district can't support that. At the same time, we're going to make sure that we are doing everything we can to show that the public school option in Saline is the best option for the vast majority of our students. And as we look forward, we're going to identify where all these kids are at this point in time. Okay, so Ben, can you go ahead and click on this link? And then before you go to the next step, I'm just going to point this out. There's all these boxes checked. This is because it's looking at a variety of different things. Homeschool, those people that are going to, those kids that are going to private schools, those that are school of choice outside the local ISD, those that are a school of choice inside the ISD. So this is going to really look at where, like, the total picture. So Ben, if you can scroll down a little bit and then click on Update Report, that blue bar, this is going to give us this snapshot. Okay, and we'll have to scroll through, so we're going to stop right there for the minute. So that top part is showing you, for example, that in Ann Arbor, we gather more students from Ann Arbor than Ann Arbor is taking from us, but not that many more. So you'll see that we're orange and we're gathering roughly 120. Ann Arbor's grabbing a little under 100 from Saline. But then you start to see all these other sort of one-offs that are strange, and I'll explain these later, like Adrian Public Schools, Britain, Clinton. Now Dexter is within the county, so you'll see like that one, we actually have a few, I mean, this is very few students, but we have a few Dexter students, but they have a few more Saline students. Okay, if you scroll down a little bit, Ben, I want to take a look at Lincoln. So Lincoln, and I'll flat out say this is difficult for the Lincoln School District when we have over 150 students coming from Lincoln and they probably have one coming from Saline. So that's what that bar represents there. Manchester's about even. We're having a little bit more than Manchester. But Milan also, we have a fair number of students coming to us from Milan and very few leaving. Okay, if we can scroll down a little bit more, Ben, I want to focus in on some outlier points. Keep going down a little bit further, a little bit more. Keep going, keep going. Okay, we're going to, and then, get down to Brighton and then South Redford. Let's get those both. Okay, right there. Okay, Brighton and South Redford. Okay, board, this is where when we came to you and talked about shared services, this is where that shows up. These are primarily private school kids that are getting their FTE public from those two schools, Brighton and South Redford, that are in the business of employing teachers to teach those kids music, PE, art, and so forth. And then as a result of that combination of FTE goes to those two school districts. But those are Saline kids that are likely in a program like Washtenaw Christian, or potentially next year in a program at St. Andrew, or any really private school, because the private schools themselves are not showing up in this chart, but what is showing up are those shared services. Now, another outlier is Oxford Community Schools. Oxford's really far from here, right? That's a virtual academy that some of those kids are tied into, and then Oxford, by providing that, gets those FTE. So there's this formula of where the FTE go based on this chart. Okay, if you scroll down a little bit more, Ben, because there's still other districts, sort of these one-offs that are taking place, and it goes all the way down. And this has also included some of the charter schools. So it's including charters. But what you don't see is, you don't see Washtenaw Christian, but Washtenaw Christian is likely showing up in those FTEs for the shared services. Okay, so Ben, let's go back to the slides. I want to go to the next one. Okay, so we're going to and then let's click back on this enrollment chart. So one of the things I asked Mandy Rucky to do in our enrollment department is put together for kids that enroll in the district and those that exit the district throughout the year and the summer. Because what people don't realize is kids are coming and going all the time, and a lot of them. So it's not just that there is a a definitive moment in time where we know exactly what our count is always going to be. Yes, there is count day, and that's how the schools are funded. But specifically, kids come and go all the time. So what Mandy put together is, over the last 4 years, how many kids are exiting the district in the summer, and how many kids are exiting during the school year. And in essence, we added all that out and averaged it all. So if you scroll down to the bottom here, Ben, I know this is a little bit difficult to see. In red, this is more or less what this is saying is there are 15 students on average per grade level, not counting young fives in kindergarten because that's too volatile to check because they're coming in at the very, very beginning of the year. It's too hard to estimate how many are leaving. But there are 15 kids on average per grade level that leave the school district each year, whether it's in the summer or during the year. And then if we go to the next tab, if you click on enrollments, Ben, in the same spreadsheet at the bottom, this is showing that on average we have 26 students, not counting young fives in kindergarten, that come into the district. So on average, that's how it's played out over 4 years. So 15 on average leaving per grade level in young five, not including young fives in kindergarten, and 26 on average per grade level coming in each year, not counting young fives in kindergarten. Okay, Ben, let's go back to the slideshow. Okay, now another hard slide to read because I tried to put all the grade levels on here, but this is where I'm getting into the predicted ranges of what we potentially will have enrolling in the school district next year. Okay, so we take a look at young fives, 2022-23. We had 59 students enrolled in young fives. This year, we currently have 69 because we did add another section. And I'm predicting, with Mandy's help, that we'll have 5 more enroll. So if you look at 23-24, that's a count of 74 young fives for a predicted gain of 15. But as a result of that, you go down to kindergarten, the prediction is a loss primarily because that young five section took a number of those proposed kindergartners. So that number, that prediction of 315 next year is based on, or this upcoming year is based on the 288 that we currently have enrolled, and then a prediction from Mandy going on historical practice of around 25 to 30 more enroll over the summer months in July and August. And that will have to track because, again, this is all volatile. All right, so now all the other grades, the way we did this was we took and did a straight line move up, and then in addition to that, we added the kids that currently have newly registered families for that grade level and then subtracted the known exits. People fill out an exit survey and they tell us that they're not coming back to the district. Now, does everybody fill that out? No, and that's why that's why this is somewhat volatile in terms of the range. But let's just focus on first grade here. So first grade, what we did is we moved the 327 students forward from kindergarten in the previous school year, and then we added 15 more kids that have registered in the district. Now, a few of those kids came in as school of choice and have registered, but the vast majority of them are just new move-ins, or they've been in the district and they're now going to school here. So we have 15 new registered first graders and 2 known exiting. So basically I added that up, and that equates to 340 for next year. And then that other area says a projected gain of 13. Okay, long story short, I'm not going to do that for every single grade level, but that's how I equated this. So if you go all the way down to 2023, 24, we're looking at, if all that plays out, that currently we have all these new people registered and we have these known people exiting, then that would equate to 6 more kids in the district next year, or 4,746. But I also put in there a range of minus 50. Because if you recall in that previous chart, Miranda had us budgeting a loss of 67 students. Because let's just say we have a number of these, we have known exits now, but a lot of people don't fill out that exit survey. They potentially just leave the district. And at the same time, we're going to have other people registering that are moving into the district. That's just how it goes throughout the summer. So that's why the prediction is based on these, the best case scenario I would be seeing would be a +6 student count. And, Miranda's potential prediction of losing 67 students, that is a possibility. But this gives you a sense of how I'm currently crunching the numbers and looking at it. And with so many variables, this is the best we can do in terms of, predicting what the enrollment will be. But I wanted everybody to kind of see where kids that aren't in the district are going and how we think about enrollment and how we estimate these numbers moving forward. So with that said, does anybody have any questions?
From the board?
Yes, question.
Have you done this before in previous years since you've been superintendent? I know you haven't been superintendent
No.
for a long time.
No, we haven't. This is the first time we've done it. Now, Mandy does track this information, but we haven't done a formal presentation like this.
Appreciate that.
Well, I guess I'll start. Well, first of all, I thank you for this presentation. I think it's a good one. I think it's something good to visit annually. I will also assure the team, the board team, that we look at enrollment regularly as part of the finance team. I mean, there are two things that drive our funding, right? Per pupil funding allowance and student enrollment. Those are the two things we're constantly talking about. So I can assure the community, the public, the team up here, I mean, this will not be the last time we will see this. We will see this I would say a minimum of 3 times and maybe more throughout our time as the finance. And I feel pretty confident saying that, considering I've been on it for 3 years now. So we will visit this regularly.
We do.
Thank you.
And we'll inform you if something looks out of place.
I have your prediction in my calendar to revisit in 14 months, and
Yeah,
we'll have a
we'll see.
conversation.
Yeah.
No wagering, though. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Great
Over or under?
detail.
A
Tim?
couple things. So there's a current enrollment study out there right now, or where people are supposed to fill out if they're going to return. When's that due? 1st of August?
There's 2 different things going on. We have an intent to return survey that goes out every year.
That's the one.
That's something we've been doing, and actually all the districts around us do it too. It basically just, we send an email to families and say, can you just let us know if you're coming back or not? This year we are asking if they're not, why, and they're providing some of those reasons. But then there's also this enrollment study that we are working on with Galapagos. That's another part. That's to contact people that aren't in the district right now to try to determine why they aren't and those reasons, and then determine.
So has that been started already then?
That's
Or
in
is it-
process, but that
it
has
hasn't
not
been,
been
okay.
completed yet.
And then slide number 2, that showed the trajectory down of all the,
Slide, you mean this one?
No, 3, sorry about that. Yeah.
This one.
Does that include, is that only students that are going to public schools? Because some of this data only includes public school students.
Yeah, this one's official student count. I just grabbed it as student count. So I am assuming this is the count of just those going to public school. And it was more just a trend pattern, but I would have to go back and check to see if, like, the trend is, hey, as this number went down, all these other kids are going to private school. That's not what this is. It's just saying this is what this public school count is.
Yeah, because
in this chart.
Obviously, the trend is going down there, but I feel like the trend in some private schools is going up. So,
yeah, I think one thing I think is important is that there's been studies just showing that our population in the state of Michigan is going down.
yeah, and I've
So,
heard
I mean, that-
but there's also a recent article in the Washington Christian Academy that they're about done, and now they're thriving and building, adding on. So I think it's important to know. That's why I want to know if this trend only includes public school students or if it included all students. So
Yeah, no, I think in certainly in the COVID years there's been a fair amount of growth in private schools. I mean, there's been a number of articles about that. So,
Like Brad said, we will be revisiting it more because there are so many assumptions in this that.
Trustee Eastep?
Yes. Oh, excuse me. I was looking at the Young Fives enrollment. I was happy to hear that there was an increase, but at the same time, it looks like we had a decrease with the numbers with our kindergarteners. And I know like the Young Five numbers aren't part of our projected at this point, but I'm sure once that's solidified, that'll be in there. But I noticed we dropped with 2021 and 2022 school year. We had 91 students in Young Fives. And then I'm looking at the first slide, but.
okay, yeah, I know what you, okay, I got you.
Yeah. And so it was 91, and then 22, 23, it went down to 59. So that's like 32 loss, and I found it interesting at the bottom of what our loss was 41 students. So
I should explain that though. We had 5 sections of Young Fives in the 21-22 school year. And then we made the decision the next year to say that we were only going to find room to do 3 sections.
okay.
So that, I mean, proportionately, there's a little less than 20 kids in each Young Fives class.
Okay. So
Anyway.
kind of with Young Fives, we're more flexible with, because I know this one opened up because there was an extra classroom this year, presumably because we have less kindergartners entering.
Well, we went back to Woodland Meadows specifically and more or less did a class count based on if there was going to be a reduction in any other sections, and we were able to verify that we for sure did have an additional classroom there, and there was a fair amount of demand from families that were on the waiting list for Young Fives, and so we felt that it was in everybody's best interest to open another section for that.
So and that was good that you were ahead of that, right?
Trying to be, yeah.
Yeah.
And I should note that the Young Fives is part of the whole per pupil. They're counted as kindergartner, so just funding-wise. Okay.
I was just going to build off of Tim and say I'd be interested to know the source on that other trend graph, if that was all students in the state of Michigan or just all public school students.
And I made a note to,
Okay.
I'll find that out. It's
Perfect.
more specific on
Thanks.
details.
Yeah, it's a remarkable tool, and if you are a data nerd, it's very easy to get lost in the MI data.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yes, for sure. Well, thank you very much. You have a second report of all verified bullying that's required by our policies, so.
Right. Okay, so this next report is called a bullying report for, I don't know exactly the title for it, but more or less what it is it's documented cases in Power School. That's where we, building principals, administrators will enter disciplinary records, and then they have to code it as to what they are calling it. And I will say this is something the district needs to work on. This is something that all districts need to work on. The bullying definition can be interpreted differently because sometimes people say, well, if it's sort of a one-time thing that happens, they may code that as something different. Whereas some people think of bullying as, oh, it's something that's targeted, that's been built up over time. It's been really clear that they're going after a specific student on multiple occasions. So this is something that we're having conversations with our administration about is, how are we making sure that we're being more consistent about how we code disciplinary infractions. It also is going to come out more when you see we're going to do a handbook review, like student handbook review at our next meeting in August. And that will be the athletic handbook review. These are all revised. The student handbook review for the buildings, and also we now have one extracurricular handbook that Lori Dawson has revised. Because the idea there is we need to work on consistency of what is categorized as these differing infractions, because there's also the, is this a second grader or is this an 11th grader? And so that's a conversation that the building principals are having as to how we are more consistent with how we're coding things. With that said, these are the current documented cases from this past school year. I'm calling them cases, but this is what we have. And what I did is, so I was not giving away the identity of anybody, I summarized what was in Power School as to what the general infractions were. So Heritage had one specific documented case, and it was student A, who was not actually part of the initial argument, was upset that student B would not apologize for an incident that allegedly happened between student B and student C. Student B wouldn't apologize, so student A organized a ring of friends to circle student B, which led to a physical altercation. Anyway, so ultimately, Cameron and Megan addressed it, and again, I'm not pointing out what the disciplinary consequence was, simply stating this was documented as bullying in Power School and Heritage. So that's the first one. Now we move to the middle school. Quite a few cases at the middle school. In fact, the middle school has the most of any building by far. I don't know if that's all that surprising. We have seen for years that middle school is the most vulnerable time for our students. They're trying to fit in socially. They're trying to get their balance with friends and balance academics. And there's many variables that exist at the middle school level, not just in Saline, but in all middle schools. But this is certainly a school that we are targeting some specific interventions to address the fact that we have more bullying cases at the middle school, 2.5 times more than any other building. And we do need to recognize that the data shows that. So anyway, these are some of the overview of some cases. Bullying and punching a student, horseplay and name calling of a student, bullying a student during recess ×2, verbal altercation with name calling and insults, charging at other students, bullying and teasing them in an attempt to start a fight, bullying a student both physically and verbally using racial harassment and other microaggressions, shoving and pushing, general horseplay for multiple days that led to a fight, bullying with words exchanged over time that led to a physical exchange. Once one of the students said they had had enough. And then finally words exchange led to a physical shoving match. So those are that was the overview of the various reasons given. And again, I made sure not to go into too much detail because I'm trying to protect the identity of any particular student. When you look at the high school, 5 documented cases of bullying. First, let's see, catcalling and making student feel very uncomfortable. Social media posts that was brought to the attention of an administrator that made a student feel very uncomfortable. Now, social media is very difficult for us, and I will say it like this. Social media is difficult because we have to be able to show that this is having an impact on the student in the school. We also have had some occasions where parents will call us up and they'll say, we have kids that live in the neighborhood and they're back and forth on social media all the time, and it's a real problem. And then we interview the students and they say, well, that may be true, but it's not a problem in school. And so we get into this balance between, well, is the school going to discipline that when it's something that isn't really, it's not happening in school and it's not being brought into the school. But there are cases where it is being brought into the school and it's having an impact on the student that's being affected or the student body as a whole, and then we do discipline and determine what plans we need to take. The next one, your student called attention to another student's medical condition and put the student on the spot in a classroom. Well, very embarrassed by it. 2 kids pushing and shoving in the locker rooms that led to a fight, and then finally inappropriate language that made a student feel threatened. And then alternative high school had one documented case where a student was encouraged to do something against his will that was inappropriate and made the student feel very uncomfortable. So what I did next was just to show these are 9 specific things that we are working on as it relates to bullying, and that first and foremost is just culturally responsive instructional model that We talk about making that part of the fabric. That means we're getting to know our students more, understand their background. And then the second part is this trusted adult piece. We keep talking to kids about, do you have a trusted adult that you can go and talk to? That number is increasing, and that's a good thing. Like, as we survey students, I think I reported 5 years back we did this, and only 40% of the kids at the high school said they had a trusted adult to talk to about things. Now that number's well into the 70% range, and more so. Our wellness committee is working on this concept that, wellness is not only for our staff, but our students, and we need to make sure that we recognize that we want to identify that some students are experiencing bullying, and what are the things that the committee can do to suggest and support. We have our social workers and counselors that are very much aware of this, particularly at the middle school level, and are working hard on it. We also have hired and continue to employ SEL coaches. Now, those were funded initially through ESSER funds, and we continue to fund through social emotional grant money that will help support payment for those. But we will take those coaches next year and truly use this data to say, okay, where is a lot of this occurring? Well, a fair amount is happening at the middle school. We got to make sure that we have enough targeted support at the middle school to better support those students. We're adding the middle school advisory time next year. They have Hornet time at the high school, but advisory time at the middle school is an attempt to make sure that teachers are connected with a certain group of students throughout the whole year, and that continues on, where that's sort of that is supposed to be their go-to person if they are having a difficulty. We already have our web and link crew programs that are helping kids transition into the middle and high school, but a real important one that we're starting next year for the first year is this Be Good People curriculum. Ben, can you click on where it says overview? There's a link after 9. And then if you can scroll down a little bit, this just shows, and again, hard to read, but it's, okay, that's good. It talks a little bit about things that we are going to be working on. And we're not going to be able to cover this entire curriculum, but during advisory time, we are going to be working on various things. It talks about showing respect, rewarding yourself, advocating, recognizing others' freedoms, showing empathy. What do you do when you're disagreeing with others? So it's a lot of these strategies that we believe our kids need to talk about and then are able to put into practice when they are coming upon the potential of a student being bullied. We feel that we need to help students with some of those conversations. Okay, and if we go back to the main slideshow, that is it for this bullying report, and I can take questions.
Clarification question from
Yeah, or
trustee.
just, I guess, pointing out, I'm gonna let most of you talk first. But thanks for bringing this to us via state law and board policy. The reported, so whoever's responsible would report the incident. I think in our policy, it's principal or designated person who, does the investigation. So, process to report those incidents. And then from the superintendent, that gets submitted in a compiled report to the board on an annual basis. Includes report of all verified incidents of bullying, aggressive, or other prohibited behavior, as well as any remedial action taken, including disciplinary actions and referrals to the superintendent. So I guess a part of that is not reflected in this. And so I wanted to point that out before we get started, that the actual remedial action or disciplinary actions and referrals are not here.
Yeah, and if that is something that the board wants me to go back and dig into Power School and find out specifically what the consequence was, I think that's what Trustee Estep is saying. I can provide that. I do feel that it is difficult to always be stating what the consequences are for actions for confidentiality reasons, but I can certainly do that.
Susan, I just missed where that came from. Could you repeat where you read that from?
That came directly from our policy, which is consistent with the state law. I don't have this. Actually, I do have the state
That's
law.
okay. Which number? I just wanted to look it up and reference later.
It's the bullying policy.
I know we have a lot.
Yep.
Well, and perhaps
It's
a way that
5517.01, bullying and other aggressive behavior towards students.
perhaps a way I could do it is like I generalized the infractions. I could generalize that these are the specific consequences that were given. Students were suspended from school, remedial action. I can provide it. Again, I'm trying to protect the confidentiality of the situation so that when people are watching reports, they can't go back and identify based on what happened and the disciplinary action that we provided, that they're now connecting this student did it at the middle school. I'm leery of that, but I will figure out a way to provide that information and still maintain the confidentiality of the students.
Yeah, you don't identify the student.
Well, but if you
Yeah,
leave
I
a
know.
trail of breadcrumbs that could lead to identification of
Yeah,
students.
there's a-
So I
so-
recognize that you're concerned for that, and I appreciate that you're gonna try to figure out a way to.
I will assure everyone that we are specifically following, as it relates to hate speech, for example. If that occurs, we are following a 3-step process on hate speech. And if there is any of these bullying actions, our principals are referring to the student handbook as to the steps they take to provide discipline, because all of these are met with a level of discipline. It's not that they aren't, it's just I'm concerned about how I report that out. So I will go back and connect those cases and provide you a general understanding of how the consequences were doled out for those infractions.
And I want to give you the state law as well to write down. It's section 380.1310B. And it's almost word for word, except for the aggressive or prohibited behavior. Yeah, 380.1310B. That's under the revised school code.
Otherwise known as Matt's Safe School Law. So I did have a few questions, but we'll just sort of spread them out. So in the, I think it was Heritage or Harvest, I can't remember, a ring of friends surrounded a student. So we count, according to the coding, that counts as one bullying event. So is that correct?
As far as I know, I mean, I did not go back and have a conversation with every principal about, I was literally pulling out those infractions and reading them and then interpreting them. But I would have to go back and have a conversation specifically with Megan and Cameron in this case and find out more details about how many cases of bullying. That was reported as one incident in Power School.
I appreciate that, but it's funny, not funny, if you're the kid. There is one recipient of bullies, but if there's a ring of friends, that sounds like a whole bunch of kids became bullies in that moment. So it's interesting to me that counts as, according to the state, an entry, like a single entry. So I'm not saying that you need to change anything or do anything, but I do find that very interesting. It just sounds like not all bullying is alike by any means.
Well, and then there's the interpretation. I mean, there are certainly times I know that say two kids get in a fight in the halls and the principal chooses not to code it that way because they were both mad at each other about something and they didn't code it as bullying. So that's where there is some interpretation. And that's where we have to have continued conversations with our building principals so that they are on the same page with how do they report bullying and be consistent. I mean, it's been something that we've been trying to work on for quite some time, not just with bullying, with all disciplinary infractions and how we're more consistent with providing those consequences.
The law and policy that I referred to defines pretty well bullying and what that includes. So that might be, I don't know if that's included in the handbooks specifically, but might be something good to review with your team.
Okay.
Others?
So I just have a few things. I kind of agree with some of the public comment earlier, like bullying has been going on for a long time, for years, as well as every one case, there's probably 5 or 6 that didn't even, make a case. I want to, like, for instance, and we talked about the definition of what constitutes bullying. One person might see it as bullying, one might not. Let's go back to that basketball incident. Was that accounted for in the high school?
I don't know. I can't speak to that, Tim, offhand.
Because it's situations like that I would think would be in the report. And so I guess I'm kind of curious if you could clarify that and go back and later check to see if that was. And we had that conversation back when the athletic department was here on, I think that we can define the consequences of the students in a way that is not going to give out, you don't have to give the student's name. I mean, I think in that situation with the basketball situation, we could have said, yep, there were 4 kids that were part of that incident and they were suspended from all other home basketball games. That's all you gotta say. At least the public now knows that there is being something done. I think we can do it in a way that's not gonna, and the students are already talking. They already know who was involved. So, yeah, we don't have to put it in back in my day, the Saline Reporter. We can put it in the Saline Post. We don't have to do that, but we can do it in a way that we don't have to say names. And when I had my incident with the school, we straight up, we had to go to all the home games and apologize. And so anyways, that was one of my statements. I guess I wanted to know if this captured that event. Is there a history? Is there a place where we can go find and see what our trend is in our bullying? Are we trending up? Are we trending down? We're throwing a lot of resources at this, so my hope is we're trending down. And I guess I'd like to see some data that shows where we're at on this and going forward. Then also, I know that there are a couple emails to the school board requesting this to be public and or copies made, and I guess I'd like to see that done as well.
Do you mean this presentation? Sure. I appreciate that you were trying to address also the rumor that was going around that nothing ever gets done when these incidents happen, and it's obviously that things do happen. If, as one of our speakers this evening said, it actually gets reported or comes out, and that's a whole other thing. Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted to thank everyone who was involved in this for taking this seriously and acknowledging these incidents, but also us remembering that these are all students and children behind here. So we're talking about 1 at Heritage and 12 at the middle school. These are kids, so taking this seriously is very important for them. The middle school, I appreciate, as a middle school parent as of a month ago, for 3 years, there was a lot going on because of COVID, because of the age, because of hormones, you name it. I appreciate the attention that school is getting, and I liked seeing some additional supports for our middle schoolers. I think that that's incredibly important. I think my question is, how are COVID monies or COVID money that may not be there in the near future affecting the possibility of some of those supports? So for example, 2 versus 1 dean of students, or some of those programs, like the COVID money has a certain duration, and will that impact what we would like to see for those middle school students specifically?
Potentially in the next several years, yes, but right now we're still taking advantage of some of that grant money. In particular, the social emotional grant money is still available for a couple more years, and we're going to fund SEL coaches out of there. But I mean, if the question is what do we do after 2 years and we have no other funding source, and I don't know, enrollment's down and we need to make some cuts, yes, there could be some impacts there. But right now we have figured out a funding mechanism to make sure that we have those positions in place for the next couple of years. And then we will work hard to, assuming there's having an impact, continue figuring out creative ways to fund those.
Brad Gruby.
So I really appreciated when my kids were going through with the Meadows, the 3 Bs, and the fact that I think it was a Leader in Me school at one time. So how do the schools themselves make these decisions about, because I think 3 Bs was wonderful, about being respectful and taking care of one another and those kinds of things. So how does each school, does the staff make those determinations as a whole? Is that from the leadership, from the principal? Is it how are we and then there's professional development and things that go along with those kinds of things. So how do we make those decisions about what kinds of programs we're doing to foster relationship building in the schools?
Yeah, at the elementary level, particularly the K through 3 buildings, or the young 5s through 3rd grade buildings, we have allowed autonomy there and have not said to people they have to do, or said to the building principals they need to do this. However, we have now coordinated that all 3 of the buildings have a social learning element about them. Pleasant Ridge has gone through that, same with Woodland, and now Harvest is taking on that as well. They're different types of programs, but they're all focused around social learning, which is more or less social emotional supports for our kids so that they're better at working each other and dealing with conflict. And so that's in place. And then clearly we're focused in on this at the middle school with middle school administration this first year, and Michelle's leadership went back and said, well, what specifically is needed, and did some more research with the staff on a curriculum, and that they've landed on that Be Good People curriculum to be implemented during advisory time.
So the staff researched that Be Good People and made that decision collectively?
Yes.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Apparently you have some things to add. No, I've got a few other questions, but I can ask those at some other time.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions. So one, do these numbers include, I think Michael brought it up with the heritage piece, but do these numbers include reports of retaliation and false allegations?
Again, I will have to go back and specifically talk to the building principals. That's not what I did for this report, but I'm writing down all the things you are asking me to do. So you'd like me to go ask about retaliation and false, what is it? False accusations. Like how is that coded? Okay, I can ask.
Yeah, because it's, I think, so in the policy, it talks about there not being retaliation and false allegations, and that if that happens, they report it, I think, in the same process as the bullying report. So I was just curious because, if we're tying in two different ones as one incident, I guess that's important if we're tying it in with the numbers. And then hate speech and acts. So a recent presentation a couple months ago regarding bullying, it came up that I had asked about were those cases going to referred to at all through like the compliance, so civil rights, Title IX, and the answer was no, that it doesn't go, I guess, get to that point. So is that reflected here in the bullying? Because you referred to in the middle school, I know you just kind of broadly said it, but there was about 11 out of 12 examples there, but one of them had said explicitly racial, I don't remember the specific.
Harassment, I believe.
Yeah, and it said, and other microaggressions, which is different from the actual racial slur, not a microaggression, but, so, yeah, I'm just, is that encompassed in there? Because I know we, from my understanding, talking to people and my own experience, that there, that does exist, hate speech and acts, and that's why it's important that we, you know, even develop that. And it's not a policy, it is in the handbook, just to be clear about that, but takes from policy. Yeah, so that's.
So are you asking, are all acts of hate speech recorded as bullying? I mean, what are you wanting me to go look for?
Well, are those in the numbers? And then, so I don't know if, are these reported cases here? Are they, you know, I know that, for example, one of them appeared to be like sexual harassment. So are we seeing the numbers as well, the numbers that we report federally? That does involve civil rights, ADA compliance, 504, Title IX. Like, is that being like in the numbers?
Okay, I can look into that.
And maybe that's coming separately from our compliance officers, I'm not sure. And then, I guess this is more of a comment. You know, one of the things that you spoke of was culturally responsive instruction, and mention of Saline High School and the middle school with their Hornet Time and advisory. I know that's kind of, with the Hornet Time, if it's gonna look like that model is kind of that homeroom and kind of those current discussions. And to my knowledge, there are families, when we talk about this opt-out policy, that have opted out of Hornet Time because of DEI, SEL topics. And so, you know, if we're using that time to have like that conversation of how we, you know, see each other and understand each other, that doesn't seem to be a place where that would be appropriate, I guess. So I just want to point that out. I found that, you know, I think that is a good space to talk and meet and do the bridges to civility. But if all students aren't part of that conversation, I think that could be problematic.
Thanks for the comment, Susan. Were there any other comments? Well, thank you. Thank you very much. This is a first time you've made this compiled report, so we assume in the future, you know, all these extra notes you're taking and care you're taking to safeguard the students will be addressed. So thank you. All right. Oh. So administration or board update. Since we've heard from you so much, would you like to pass on going first?
No, I'll go first. And it's really just, again, to welcome Jackie. We're really pleased to have you as our Director of Communications and Community Relations. We know you're going to do a terrific job. You already hit the ground running with a lot of projects and learning in this first week, so we're very appreciative of that. The other announcement is a big announcement that Dr. Ryan Rowe, who was our Southwest and Washtenaw Consortium Director, has now received I guess I would say a promotion in that he is now going to be the county director of Career Tech Ed, because they have created a position with the idea, in conjunction with all the superintendents in the county, that we need to expand programming, especially for our kids on the east side of the county. And Dr. Rowe is going to lead that charge. And as a result, we have been able to interview and hire Kara Stemmer as the new director of the Southwest Washtenaw Consortium. She was the marketing teacher at the school district and has her administrative degree and is really ready for this next step. So Assistant Superintendent Ellis has worked it out that we now have Kara on board, and we're excited for her, and also excited for Dr. Rowe, who will still be connected with us. It's just he's in a bigger role. So congratulations to all of them.
Thank you. We can work down from one end to the other.
I don't really have much new.
You worked on your tan.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Go for it, Brad.
All right. So I wrote out my comment here, and I hope the public and board will bear with me. So I am glad that I had a month to think about and write and rewrite the comment I'm about to make regarding public comments, social media posts, and decorum here at the boardroom. Before I go too much further, I want to acknowledge that public comment is a place where, within the boundaries of our public comment policy, I feel the public is free to share their honest feedback for up to 3 minutes with us, and I recognize the importance of individuals stating their truth when they're here, and I value the courage that it takes to come forth and to speak. In my mind, there are 3 functions that we as a board are primarily responsible. Number 1, I think, is assisting our superintendent and evaluating him, and he executes the vision and goals of our school district, and so that's number 1. Number 2 is we create policies to guide the vital work to support student learning. And 3, we maintain a fiscally responsible and managed school district. And so I am going to now go into a little bit of but I am imploring our public to think about our comments, our social media posts, our posters and signs, and the things that we do and how they impact these 3 things. You know, when you're making a comment, creating a post, a sign, any of those things, I want you to, I hope that I could ask you to look into how do those things help us to do the 3 things that I just stated this board is primarily responsible for. And I'm not going to lie, I've seen some disappointing and what I would call divisive rhetoric. And I really do see 7 genuine individuals who are here on this board who are working hard to connect with our community, to connect with the city of Saline, through our retreat. We tried to do that. We're moving meetings and into the evening to try to allow comment and connection with the community. I know we're not perfect about it, but I've seen some really disappointing items, and I guess I wanted to finally just say, I implore our public to reconsider those things. And I'm asking you to maintain decorum, civility here. And I'll say this when I was campaigning, and I'll say it again. I believe that we are all in this together for our kids. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brad, we'll work our way down.
Just a couple quick comments. So I was not present for the last meeting. I was out of the country on a mandatory work trip. Had I been here, I would thank all of our retirees. So I wanted to pause and just do that. We appreciate the many, many years of passion, love, and service, and say congratulations to all of our graduates. One of the very best days of every year is being a part of that graduation ceremony, and I'm so very proud of them. The other thing I wanted to say is I was reflecting on our board packet and rereading it before tonight's meeting. A lot of times people think public school districts are slow during the summer, but it really stood out to me, our HR department and technology and operations and all of the very, very hard work that they're doing over the summer to get us prepared for our new year. So I wanted to specifically thank those groups. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, well-deserved thanks for everyone.
Okay. I want to thank every single person who has personally reached out to me and who spoke up tonight, and those who have contacted the board and superintendent to stand up against hate that is being directed at people who are actively supporting our LGBTQ+ students and progress in DEI to make our district a safer and inclusive environment. I would like to share a quote with you by Martin Luther King Jr. The ultimate measure of a person is not where one stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where one stands in times of challenge and controversy. Thank you so much for those who are taking a stand during this time.
Thank you very much, Trustee Eastet. I just have one quick thing to report. I spent 4 days at ISTE Live 23 in Philadelphia, and I've given everyone on the board a copy of Educational Leadership Magazine, which was on 50,000, it felt like 10,000 chairs. 4 days of workshops, hands-on sessions, the leadership exchange, meetings with state tech directors. I presented at least one paper, as far as I remember. It was a bit of a blur. In addition, I got some cool selfies with the stars of Abbott Elementary, Tyler Williams, and I met Allie Ward. I don't know if you've ever listened to the Ologies podcast. If you're a science, do you know Allie Ward? She's awesome. And she just asks questions of people who study things, drunk butterflies and wild and crazy things. And yeah, it was an honor. Thanks for noticing. Thanks for the nods, Lisa. It was quite the amazing week. We entered, I'm on the board of directors, that's why I'm kind of interested in this. We started with 9,000 people, but by the time the 4 days ended, there were over 15,000 vendors, teachers, administrators, kids from all over the world were there presenting, and it was just an amazing thing. So we have sent teachers in the past, paid for them to go, and I'm continuing to encourage that this year. And another side note, Kara Davis came into her desk and found a whole pile of ISTE books. I mean, I was just cleaning out my cupboards, but no, she is going to make sure that these books go to teachers. It's covering a wide range of things. So that's my little gift of thanks to our many outstanding educators here. The consent agenda, that's the second to last highlight of this. The consent agenda is listed in this agenda and will not be read aloud. The motion noted will allow for the authorization of all listed items without discussion unless a member of the board requests that any one or all be considered individually. I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize the consent agenda as printed.
I would emphatically like to make that motion, particularly for that HR report.
Do I have to put an exclamation mark after your name?
Well, put one for me too, please. Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Thank you very much. Opposed? Hearing none. Items scheduled on the next agenda.
Handbook reviews and a K-12 Insight School Quality Survey report.
It's done. All right, thank you. I'm now going to look over at Kara Davis. Are there any public comments lined up? All right, great.
I'll be ready. All right, good.
Okay. I have one question, which I couldn't ask during the slide presentation regarding student population. The green light's on. I think I'm just short. Sorry. So during the population slides, I just was curious if this include the consortium kids, because I thought they were totally separate, but didn't know if some of those numbers came as part of your population. And I know you can't answer me from the board table, but with the Mylan kids and the other local kids from Dexter, I didn't know if that included the kids who come from the specialty centers, for lack of a better term. And then The focus, though, today of my comment would be your policy 5517.01, which talks about bullying specifically. While I appreciate the slide presentation and the report there, I am a bit concerned about the accuracy. And so by following Michigan State Policy 380.130, B as in boy, paragraph 5, letter I, it specifically says that the procedure to document is for any prohibited incidents that is reported. And your policy as well, the 5517.01, also talks about documenting all reported incidents. I have a question related to how an incident is qualified. Our acts of hate speech included. There was one notation on the middle school slide, but none for the high school. Our physical assaults included. There was one note on the high school slide, but not at the middle school. Sexual harassment, sexual assaults. We had a mom stand here at the podium talking about her son being sexually assaulted more than 5 times. There was no note on that slide that included her complaints. Our cases or threats regarding school violence included. We shut the high school for 2 days because of a death threat. I didn't see anything, or a death list against, I think it was 10 or 12 kids. I didn't see anything about that on that slide that included a total N of 5. There was an incident between the field hockey team and the football team, which would have included a minimum of 60 complainants, which didn't go anywhere. The dance team incident at the basketball game that Mr. Austin discussed as well. None of those made this. So at the risk of sounding crass, like, I don't believe those numbers for an instance. I think they are total nonsense. As a middle school and high school mom, I am very concerned about safety. We have eliminated a dean of student position, and my understanding is the kids liked that person a lot. I worked the dance, and kids from every clique or subset sought her out. Now, I'm not saying that particular person, but the fact that you eliminated that position is concerning, and you got rid of the resource officer at the middle school. Again, highest incident of reports in the district. Again, I don't believe it was only 12, and yet you remove a resource officer. Transparency remains an issue, and maybe you need to look as a board as how you're going to include all of those things under bullying.
Thank you, Megan Gunderson. Lisa Slauson, followed by Libby Williams. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. First of all, 3 things. First of all, you need to be really careful as a public official who takes tax dollars, who is elected, to say things that would chill First Amendment free speech. You need to be really careful about that, like really careful. And I'm a lawyer. That's free advice. Number 2, wow. The first discussion that you had regarding hiring lawyers, you proved to me 3 things. Number 1, there's a heck of a lot of you that don't understand your policy manual. You should be able to recite that back and forwards. Number 2, are you all getting trained by MASB? Because if you're not, you need to avail yourself of that. And somebody should FOIA how each of these people are getting trained. That's a great FOIA to ask for. Also, the other thing that I noticed is, wow, Steve must be tired because you guys don't understand your policy. The policy that when we changed the governance model, you don't understand that either. When we changed the governance model, and that hasn't changed in all these years, the person who you go to ask for legal, to get legal, is him, President McVeigh. Then he goes to Steve Lotch. You should not be calling Steve Lotch saying, I need a lawyer. No. Because otherwise you're all going to be spending our tax dollars. Now, I understand that Steve is going to call the lawyer every now and again, because he's the educational leader of a district. So I don't care if he calls the lawyer. He knows what he can do. But all of you are elected. You are supposed to be trustees of our taxpayers' dollars. So if you want to talk to the lawyer, talk to McVeigh. If you want to do it for free, call MASB. They have a lawyer. Call him. Call Brad Banasek if he's still there. Also, lastly, the bullying report. Steve, I think that's a good report, but there was I think it's on one of the middle school ones that says a racial harassment, racist statement or something. Never once was it mentioned in any of your report LGBTQ. And we've known this. You sat on the board, you sat next to me during 2010. So you know that this is an issue and that our LGBTQ kids are being harassed and bullied or hate speech, whatever you want to define it as. But we have to do better and we have to have these discussions. I know it's embarrassing, but these are children. We have to have these. We have to do what's best for them. And I know you all are doing that, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lisa Slauson.
Is it actually on? Okay, good, I don't have to press it. Okay. I have two quick comments. The bullying report did not list the instances of bullying done by actual school staff. It did not report on what a student should do if their reporting is ignored by the administration. It also did not specify what ramifications and consequences are for the staff that bully students. These instances should also be investigated and put in the report. And my second comment is Happy Disability Pride Month. I'd like to propose that the board that there be more disability inclusive playground equipment that is not just ramps. These would include things like wheelchair accessible swings, seesaws, and play structures. I believe the Saline Parks and Rec has a CARES grant proposal already in motion for new playground equipment. So this is the perfect time to update some of these outdated facilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. The next meeting will be held on August 8th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. And we are going to move into closed session. I'd like to entertain a motion to enter closed session of the board actually as soon as possible. Let's say 8:34. Our superintendent has to make a Zoom meeting right after, so we want to try and we're going to skip on the bio break. It's going to be a very short meeting. So at I'll say 8:34 with the intent to reopen at approximately 8:44 for the purposes of school board to consider security planning to address existing threats or prevent potential threats to the safety of students and staff under Section 8K. Under 8K, a simple majority vote is sufficient to enter into closed session. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
That would be Mr. Austin.
Support.
Who is that?
Me.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So members of the public, thank you very much for coming. We'll escort you out. We have to close the door behind you. I'm not rushing you. We're not going to be deliberating or voting on anything. It's a simple update, so you won't be missing anything. Say when, Ben? I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the regular Board of Education meeting of July 11th, 2023 at 8:51. 8:52.
So moved.
Second.
Stebbin.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
We're out of here. Thank you.